Hi, welcome to another episode of Luke Alike. We're looking at the book of Luke, reading big chunks of it, breaking it down, sharing a few thoughts. It's not a verse by verse study. As someone asked, why don't you do a verse by verse study? But to say it's more of a concept by concept study. Some things that on this pass, as I'm going through it, I'm noticing and pointing out to you. Very much like a conversation would be happening across the table. So in this conversation, if you want to talk back, feel free to just talk to the screen or your phone or whatever you're watching me on right now. I'm listening. I'm just not going to act like it. How about that? We are still in Luke chapter 1, though, and we go all the way to Luke chapter 1, verse 57. For the birth, not of Jesus, though, you know that's in Luke 2, don't you? This is actually the birth of John the Baptist. Another important birth, probably one that you're not as familiar with, and that's okay, it's understandable. It does get overshadowed by the birth of Jesus as well it should. But Luke chapter 1, verse 57 says this, Now the time came for Elizabeth to give birth, and she bore a son. And her neighbors and relatives heard that the Lord had shown great mercy to her, and they rejoiced with her. Remember, she's not supposed to be able to have a child. And on the 8th day, they came to circumcise the child, and they would have called him Zechariah after his father. But his mother answered, No, he shall be called John. And they said to her, None of your relatives is called by this name. And they made signs to his father, inquiring what he wanted his name to be called. And he asked for a writing tablet, and he wrote, His name is John. And they all wondered. And immediately his mouth was open, and his tongue loosed, and he spoke, blessing God. Because remember, he couldn't talk because he wasn't believing this was going to happen. And in verse 65, it says, And fear came upon all the neighbors, and all these things were talked about through all the hill country of Judah. And in verse 66, and all who heard them laid them in their hearts, saying, What then will this child be? For the hand of the Lord was with him. Now, I'm going to end in verse 67 there and just want to come back for a minute and pick back up with the story. It's a miraculous story. It's a miraculous birth. And the reason that whole little bit is in there about what do you call the child, because it would have been common in those days, in that era, for John to be named after his father. And so the fact that he wasn't was stunning to the people that heard it. But since Zechariah couldn't speak, they wanted confirmation. So in other words, obviously Elizabeth doesn't know what her son's name is supposed to be. And so let's talk to Zechariah instead. Oh, the problem is Zechariah can't talk. So Zechariah then is at a crossroads because at that point he does have to decide, man, this has really happened, and I'm going to be obedient. I'm going to do what I was told to do. And so when he asks for that writing tablet and that writing instrument, he's able to write out that his name is John. And in that moment, because of his act of faithfulness, then all of a sudden, the ability to speak comes back. Now, notice what happened, though, in the aftermath of it. In verse 65, and fear came on all the neighbors, and all these things were talked about through all the hill country of Judah. People were afraid because they were astonished, and they were afraid because something was happening that wasn't expected. Ever notice how many times in the book of Luke, and we'll see them from time to time, Luke talks about people being afraid, or we're hearing the reminder to fear not that comes from God. Luke, as a physician, I think, was very intrigued by people, how they reacted, how their reactions changed and affected them. And so Luke, as much as any other author, points out those moments when people are fearful. And as they are fleshing out that fear, they begin to talk and word begins to spread. Here's what I know. Anytime that God steps into someone's life, anytime that God steps in and starts making a change, there are a number of reactions. There will be some that will be excited. Obviously, for Elizabeth and Zechariah, they were excited about this and they were celebrating. The people were amazed, some were stunned, some were quiet, And then obviously others are fearful. And again, all of those are very legitimate reactions that you still see to this day when God is doing something. Hopefully you're in the camp that's amazed and excited. And hopefully you're not fearful of God working, but instead you're looking forward to it. And hopefully you're the one that is celebrating and saying and spreading the good news of what God is doing. The birth of John is a very special birth because it sets up some things that are going to be happening in the days ahead. And John the Baptist is the waymaker, if you will, the one who is going to blaze the path to help prepare the way for Jesus, the Messiah, who is on the way. And so, with that as your backdrop, that's what's happened. John the Baptist has arrived. Now, also by way of clarification, there's no indication in Scripture that John was a Southern Baptist. Instead, he's just known as John the Baptizer, which is where we get Baptist. And so just a little clarification there, because I know a lot of you that might listen are Southern Baptists, and so you think you've cornered the market on who John was. No, you don't. He probably wouldn't address appropriately in most Southern Baptist churches that I've been to. Just an afterthought, has nothing to do with the passage, just saying it out loud because I know you're thinking it, and that's what it looks like to me. And so I'll join you in our next edition as we continue our plow through Luke. We'll still be in chapter 1. Go figure. I'll join you next time.